So, Dave, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for coming. So, last time we spoke about HMOs. This time we're going to talk about phospholipids. So, again, let's just start at the very top. Basic, what are phospholipids and why are they important in the infant formula diet?
Sure. Thanks for having me back
Yeah,
again,
of course.
Karen. So phospholipids, they are termed amphiphilic, meaning that one side is very polar, one side is very nonpolar. The majority of these can be classified as glycerophospholipids. And the general structure, if we start with the polar head, is a glycerol backbone.
hmm
And then we have an ester linkage to a phosphate. And then another ester linkage to can be a variety of different organic compounds, such as choline or inositol or serine or a phenylamine. Now, there also is another phospholipid called sphingomyelin,
Yes.
also can be classified as a sphingolipid. And the difference there is the substitution of that glycerol backbone is with a sphingosine. And that polar head, we have the ester linkage to a phosphate, and then it's specific to a choline.
hmm
On the nonpolar tail side, we have an addition of one additional fatty acid besides that sphingosine saturated tail. So we have actually two saturated carbon chains on the sphingomyelin. When you look at the glycerophospholipids, typically one of those fatty acid tails will be saturated while the other one is unsaturated.
Yeah.
Um, Phospholipids are a very important structure in terms of cell membrane. That's what we think about when we view phospholipids. We
hmm
all remember from biology the cellular membrane,
Yeah.
right? Um, but they serve a very important function in predominantly the brain and a lot of the nervous system,
hmm
and has been shown in a lot of clinical research that cognitive development of infants it really hinges upon the supplementation of phospholipids in the diet.
Okay. So, another term that's coming up a lot in the industry is milk fat globule membranes. So, how are those related to phospholipids?
Yeah, so another, I guess, function of phospholipids, right, is as an emulsifier.
hmm
And what that means is in, let's just say, human milk or milk in general, there is a fat content.
Sure.
And so the fact that the phospholipid being amphiphilic, it can create what we call milk fat globules. And it creates an emulsification within the milk. So it maintains the oils and the fats are mixed within the water portion of the milk. And the milk fat globule membrane, the outer shell of that is made up of phospholipids. It's actually a trilayer that covers the core being the triglyceride, right?
hmm
The main milk fat portion. And within the phospholipid shell, right, it kind of serves as a scaffolding for many other different types of lipids or for certain glycoproteins. And the milk fat globule membrane has become, I guess, a hot topic of interest because infant formulas, a lot of that, it becomes degraded through processing. So when you take a typical infant formula, like a non-whole milk based infant formula, like a skimmed
Sure.
milk, as you go through pasteurization, homogenization, spray drying,
hmm
the amount and the species change, right? So the amount decreases and the
Yes.
species change from what you start with to what you get at the end in that formula. And so they're looking at, well, how can we get the amount and the significant phospholipids that are important for the our infant growth and development back
Right.
right into the infant formula. So milk fat globule membrane has become a very popular topic at this time.
Yeah. So, Dave, what are the typical ingredients that infant formula manufacturers use to bring in phospholipids? And what mechanisms are they using to try and achieve the levels that we see in human milk?
Yeah, so just starting out with kind of a base infant formula, and a lot of the traditional ones are not using like a whole milk base. So
Hmm.
use a skim milk base or non-fat milk. And they'll have lecithin, right? And that is typically coming from a plant source of
Sure.
soy, right? And that serves kind of as your emulsification, right, of your infant formula when you make that up.
Hmm.
So the lecithin is your predominant source in those types of formulas. And you can, to a lesser extent, get some from the plant based oils or the whey protein ingredient coming through. The thing about the soy lecithin though is sphingomyelin that we talked a little about earlier is not present in plants.
Okay.
So the only source that you're of single myelin that you're getting in these is from potentially that whey protein ingredient or from that skimmed milk.
Hmm.
But again, we talked about how processing can degrade and change those
Yeah.
from initial to the finished product. So manufacturers are looking at ways, how do we increase, that amount of phospholipids to represent the human milk better. And so you'll see whole milk
Hmm.
used in a lot of formulas, and that's to provide that fat back into the original bovine source milk, right? And
Yes.
that's going to contain all of the typical phospholipids that you have, including sphingomyelin.
Hmm.
The other option is an ingredient where they'll do a whey protein enriched milk fat globule membrane ingredient. And
Hmm.
so they'll add that into the formula. So there's typically two ways that they're doing this.
Okay. And what's the standard method in the industry at the moment to measure phospholipids?
Yeah, typically, and I would say historically, 31p NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance.
Yeah.
That's your traditional method. But there's also HPLC with a Hillock separation and evaporative light scattering detection. Now, some of the downsides of the NMR technique is its sensitivity, right? And complexity. When we get into infant formulas, like we've talked before, how complex that matrix is,
Hmm.
it can present challenges in the spectrum.
Yeah.
With the evaporative light scattering detector, we're looking for non-volatile components, right? So it's picking up everything,
Yeah.
right? That is non-volatile, eluting at that portion in the chromatograph. So specificity is a concern with that, especially in infant formula. Um, Now, the more common techniques, analytical techniques that are being used today, and what we term as lipidomics,
Hmm.
are mass spec based approaches. And it typically falls into two general categories. One being direct infusion followed by the mass analyzer, or direct infusion into the mass analyzer. That's also called shotgun
Yeah.
lipidomics. And then the other is providing a separation, a column separation prior to the mass analyzer.
Hmm.
Um, some of the downsides of the direct infusion shotgun approach, right, is suppression.
Yeah.
Right, the whole sample's going in there at one time, and then also some source artifacts that can be found. With the separation, it provides, I guess, some relief from some of those issues.
So, Eurofins is developing a method to measure phospholipids. So, can you tell us a little bit about our method and how it differs and perhaps is more beneficial than the standard method on the market?
Yep. So we are developing a method at this time using ultra high pressure or ultra high performance liquid chromatography, utilizing a Hillock separation. And what that does with Hillock is it separates the classes of phospholipids apart.
Hmm.
Um, and then following that, we use multiple reaction monitoring, MRM quantitation. And that also provides another level to be able to look at specific ions for the species within the class. Now, the NMR technique and the HPLC ELSD technique cannot determine the species within class. And maybe I'll provide some background on what I mean by that. So if I pick a particular class of phosphatidylcholine,
Hmm.
if we look at the two fatty acid tails on that, those two fatty acid tails can be a variety of different types of fatty acids. And so each unique combination
Hmm.
is a species.
Okay.
So with our MRM being used, we can actually determine the specific species within that class. Um, where is that helpful? I think in terms of from a quantitation standpoint, I know for sure I have a higher level of confidence that I'm measuring a particular phospholipid class, but also the additional level of confirmation,
Yep.
right, of being able to provide that species. Um, so the and that's truly the benefit. And then sensitivity, right? That provides us a whole nother level of sensitivity beyond those other two methods.
Perfect. So, is there any plans for our method beyond being able just to offer it as a routine test in the US?
Yeah, so we do plan on submitting this method to the AOAC stakeholder panel on
Hmm.
infant formula and adult nutrition. There is an active working group for a phospholipids method. There have been a few methods that have been submitted at this time, all of them based on a mass spec based approach. But I believe we will be able to submit that. And in regards to an internal offering, I again, I think we should be able to have that method ready and be able to offer.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's super exciting new development for Eurofins. I think it's going to be great to compete against the NMR method. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you accomplish at Spiffin and beyond. Dave, thanks
Great.
so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you coming.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much.